morning, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today. The business community is eager to hear what's been happening in Parliament. A difficult couple of years. We're just ramping up again, but clearly we do have uncertainty. So I just wondered if you could express a little bit around that, and also an update on what's been happening in Parliament.
Yes, of course. Well, I mean, as you say, things are ramping up again. And I think one of the things that's really great whenever I'm out, either in the constituency or in central London, it's just great to see crowds again,
Yes.
and lots of people out and about. People are keen to get out shopping, get out to restaurants and bars and all the things that we've not been able to do. I think I'm really hoping, touch wood, that we have a great Christmas, in every sense, both for the economy and just for people's own personal well-being, not being able to be with their families last year. So I'm really, really hopeful for that. I think it's important that people continue to be cautious. And my big thing is I feel people should just be testing regularly and just to do everything they possibly can to stop the spread. We're hearing concerning news this morning about South Africa again, which hopefully, again, touch wood, won't amount to anything very much. I think generally speaking, the UK is in quite a good place. With high levels of vaccination, booster jabs being rolled out, teenagers being vaccinated. The vaccine is the important thing in keeping serious cases out of our hospitals. So everybody just needs to get their jab if they haven't already had it. Go for their booster, get a flu jab. Do everything you possibly can to keep yourselves healthy and to limit spread. But beyond that, it's looking really, really positive. And it's, as I say, really good to see our retail and hospitality businesses back up and running. I know that the travel sector's had a really rough time and that they're the last, really. And as I say, news from South Africa today is a bit concerning. And so we can expect to see more perhaps more restrictions to try and make sure that we're containing variants, which I do think is really, really important, because we saw what happened when Delta arrived. But on what I've been speaking to the government a lot about more assistance for the travel industry, because they're the ones that are still facing restrictions, fewer and fewer restrictions over time. But as I say, we may see a return to restrictions. And so where there are restrictions, there should be government support. And so I have been asking the Department for Transport about that and lobbying the government, because I think that's really, really important. I mean, travel and tourism is such an important strategic industry for the UK, apart from anything else. So it needs support while it can't operate at full at peak capacity. But yes, I think in Parliament over the last few weeks, we've obviously seen an announcement on rail infrastructure. That's not going to have a massive impact, obviously, in Richmond, but it bothers me that we aren't seeing the commitment to investing in our public transport that I really think we need to see, both for climate change reasons, but also just for that whole investing in the economy and getting us back up and running. I'm disappointed that we're not seeing a greater commitment to that. There's been, just this week in Parliament, we've had the coronavirus rent bill, which I think will be good, because for those businesses that couldn't carry on trading out of their premises but were still needing to pay rent, they will have a lot of rent debt. And so moves are being made to try and help businesses manage that, which I'm very much in support of. And I think, so, I think there's still a lot, as you say, of uncertainty, a lot of it coronavirus related. There's a lot of Brexit related uncertainty still. We expect to see more customs checks coming in January. And I really hope that our local businesses are aware of those, thinking about those and preparing themselves for those, because I'm just concerned that otherwise they could have a really big impact, especially coming so soon after Christmas. So I think that's something to be really aware of. If you're importing from the EU, there may well be a change to paperwork and requirements from January the 1st, and I really want to make sure that people have got that on their radar. Beyond that, the thing that I'm hearing everywhere from every sector, and not just the ones that have been in the headlines, is the difficulties of getting staff, and of course, that stems from a range of different causes. Brexit is obviously chief amongst them, that we can no longer recruit easily from the European Union. Lockdown meant that a lot of staff from other countries went home to be with their families rather than stay in London for lockdown, and many of them haven't returned for all sorts of reasons. They're doing new things with their lives. if they find it difficult to come here now or whatever. So Brexit and COVID combined, I think for a lot of people as well, just the experience of lockdown has made them reevaluate what they're doing. And certainly we're hearing quite a lot about staff exodus because they've decided they want to do something different or take a step back or go in a new direction, whatever. So quite a few companies are struggling with that. And of course, there's still a lot of people who are having to isolate because they've got symptoms or they've had a positive test, and that's obviously having a huge impact on workforces everywhere. So staffing, I think, is at the moment the biggest, the biggest barrier to recovery. Some of it's COVID; it's made worse by Brexit, and some of it is just, as I say, that kind of. I think one of the phenomenon we're particularly seeing is people perhaps retiring earlier than they might have planned because lockdown has made them think differently about what they want to do. So one of my big one of my big priorities is to make sure that we're investing in skills and young people and mental health, most partly because they've had such a rough time during lockdown, particularly those who weren't able to sit their exams properly or whatever, and it had a really big impact on their mental health. But it's obviously a concern for them as individuals, but also we need to think about, we need a new workforce, ready and able. If we can't recruit from the EU anymore, then we need to look much more to our own resources. What is it that we need young people to be doing? And we need to see a much bigger investment in that and focus on that. I was at Kingston College the other day, and they were talking to me about how much they'd love to be able to do a course in electric vehicle maintenance, but they can't get anyone to teach it. So, we have, sort of some real issues around trying to skill up our young people to do the jobs that we know will be waiting for them in 3 to 4 to 5 years' time. So I think that's a huge challenge as well, and something that I'll keep pushing the government on.
Yeah, I'm going back to what you said on retail. Definitely, the figures are up, aren't they? So that we're hoping that things are getting back to normal. In terms of local business, they're reporting that the local shopkeepers, local B2C, as we call them, businesses, they are confident that business is getting back to normal. What is interesting for us at the Chamber of Commerce is every time, from a psychology perspective, every time there's any comments of problems and difficulties and be careful, then what happens is that people start to get nervous again and cautious. Well, we need to be cautious. It's finding that fine line, isn't it, between continuing with our lives and being
it is very difficult. It is very difficult, but I think And I think what we're seeing is we're in a slightly odd situation where we've still got very high case rates. We're seeing I think an average of about 40,000 new infections a day, which is high, but we aren't seeing those sorts of case rates having the impact on our hospitals that we saw sort of back at the beginning of the year. So it's kind of slightly uneasy equilibrium. It's still out there, it's still rampant, it's still infecting lots of people, but the people it's infecting are not suffering as much as they did, and that's the impact of the vaccine. So it's a slightly odd situation to be in. I would personally feel much more comfortable if case rates were a lot lower, and we might start to see that now that more people are vaccinated and they will be picking up antibodies from having actually suffered the infection. Then the virus, rather, infections of virus. Then we might start to see fewer and fewer people catch it. But as I say, we've always got to worry about new variants. So we do need people to be cautious. But as long as people are vaccinated, the impact shouldn't be as severe as it would have been a year ago.
So your message is to get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated. Again. Get the jab. Get the jab. Get the jab. Get the jab. Get the third jab. Have the flu jab. And it's quite interesting because they're starting to vaccinate the teenagers now. And my daughter just turned 12 a few weeks ago, like literally the week before the vaccine bus came round to her school. So, and I was a little bit worried because not everyone in her year was getting the vaccine because some of them were too young, or most of them are too young. And I said, well, do you want to talk about this? Do you want to get it? And she was just kind of like, don't want another lockdown. So she was like literally first in the queue with her sleeve rolled up to have the jab. So, there's no uncertainty there. So I was, obviously very, very pleased that she felt that way, because if she had been reluctant, I think I'd have found that quite difficult, because I really wanted her to have it. But
Interesting.
That's what I'm hearing.
Anecdotal.
That's what I'm hearing. You know, young people everywhere are kind of like, they are sick to death of lockdowns, they're sick to death of this virus. And they're very much getting the message that the vaccine is the way out. So that's very heartening to hear. But I do know that there are people who are still anxious about having it, who worried about side effects and so on and so forth. And I would just say, talk to your GP. You know, there's lots of information on the NHS website. I think they're, you know, going to quite a lot of lengths to try and, you know, explain what happens to people. So I really would encourage people to have it if they can.
Oh, thank you for that. That's a great message. And let's hope we can get through Christmas and into next year with a recovery from a business perspective.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think the two things are linked. The more people feel confident, the more the more sustainable our economic recovery will be, and the more confidence that business people can have in the future. But it is a bit of a delicate balance at the moment, and the more people get vaccinated, the better.
And on rail, what is the update on the line between into our borough?
So the South Western Railways have been consulting on timetable changes.
Right.
And myself and Munira Wilson and also Ed Davey, we've all been pushing back quite strongly on that, because the timetable changes they're talking about would come into force in December 2022, so not for another year. And we think it's much too soon to be able to make an estimate of what kind of demand there's going to be. And apart from anything else, we want to see real investment in rail services. We want to encourage people to use the railways. There's been a lot of people going back to using their cars during lockdown and after, and that's understandable while people have been concerned about infection rates. But it really is important that people are encouraged to use public transport again for its sustainable, but also, you know, climate change reasons and the air quality reasons. And so it's time to be investing and to be thinking about, you know, what additional services can be put on. So, I mean, you know, part of South Western Railway's case for doing it is that if they're fewer services, they're more reliable. They're more, you know, somebody said, you know, the most reliable service would be the one that, you know, you just ran once a day. You'd never have a problem. So you know, yes, there's a balance to be struck between, you know, reliability and quantity of service, but nevertheless, it's no doubt in my mind that we need to be maintaining our rail services and encouraging people to use them. And if we cut rail services, then people will go back to using their cars because, you know, they can't use the train. So it's too soon, I think, to see what kind of demand we'll have on the railway this time next year. You know, there is obviously an increased trend towards working from home. People are doing hybrid working now. They're working a bit in the office and a bit at home, and that suits a lot of people. And it's great that they have that flexibility. But what I'm certainly noticing is there's a lot of people traveling in the evenings and at the weekends. So it is that kind of, you know, you might have been working from home all day, but you want to go out to town at the end of the day to go and see your friends and so on and so forth. And some of that's pent up demand, I'm sure. But, you know, we want to make sure, and I think it's because it's really critical as well for the health of our London economy in particular, that people can still travel easily from places like Richmond and East Sheen and Barnes and get into London to go to the theatre or to go to the restaurants. Yes. And if we cut services or we don't sustain services, then people won't be able to travel in and you know, some of our really, you know, amazing quality cultural institutions and our fantastic restaurants and all the other, you know, reasons that we live on the outskirts of London won't be able to survive. So that's why, you know, railways are so important in the local area.
That's what certainly I can pick this up with LCCI. They're all out in Dubai at the moment.
Ooh.
Yes, at the Business the World Fair. But I can bring this up with them and ask them to lobby on this so that there is
a real concern. I think transport across London, transport for London in particular, are making the case that, you know, as they're very much over the last sort of 5 to 10 years had the model of being primarily funded by fare income, and obviously that's fallen off a cliff during lockdown, and they still need some support. And it's still too early to say whether we're going to get back to the, you know, the levels of use that we had. But even if we don't, we still need to maintain those services. It's really, really important. So it's a bit of a critical time, I think, for transport across London. And I shall certainly be supporting Transport for London in their calls to get more support from the DfT, at least in the short to medium term, to make sure that we've still got the transport system that we need to maintain an economic recovery.
Also, you mentioned government funding. What's interesting, on our call across London with the various chambers, it became apparent that there is still quite a bit of money that has been handed through the ARGs, actually, the assisted restriction grants, sorry,
Yes.
ARGs. And this money, apparently, there is a concern about it getting to businesses. Now, I haven't actually discussed it with our Richmond Borough Authority, but it would be quite interesting to know. I mean, one of our chambers is actually in the London area, has got £250,000 given from the council to support businesses, and they're giving it to the Chamber of Commerce to deal with things. So the rest of us were like, whoa. I think Greenwich has given a small amount out, but the others really haven't. So it's quite an interesting. And I was asked at one point, and I said, well, it's really important this money gets to businesses.
Yes.
Particularly small businesses.
Yes.
But that's kind of something to mention, that there is money out
well, I
there.
think it's quite interesting because a lot of the business support available at the outset of the lockdown was very much tied to rateable premises. And yet, of course, I've heard from so many businesses that don't have rateable premises for one reason or another, or just starting up and don't have records to show, or all sorts of reasons why they weren't eligible for some of the grants. And yet viable businesses doing offering valuable services and goods to their customers, and business people, and many, the self-employed in particular, were very much left out on a limb, particularly those who were not registered as limited businesses or whatever. So I think there needed to be a bit of discretion, and it's good that the local authorities did have some discretionary grants that they could hand out. But my understanding in Richmond, but do check directly with the council, is that they allocated everything they were given, and that there is nothing. It's closed to further applications, but as I say, do double check.
Yeah, I will. I will check that, because we had a very small, I mean, really small amount. We had the same as businesses, actually, and we just need to make sure. So I will make sure. And I know Richmond is different. It doesn't get as much usually as other parts of London, and that could be the same from large parts of London that are quite prosperous.
I don't know about the business funding, but certainly there are complicated and fairly opaque formulas. Someone in Whitehall calculates for how much central government grant different local authorities receive, and a lot of deprivation is a key indicator, and Richmond is not amongst the most deprived London boroughs. I think it probably goes without saying, which is not to say we don't have pockets of deprivation, and parts of the borough certainly do need economic development as well as other support, but nevertheless it tends to lose out when the calculations are made on those kind of factors. Yeah,
and there are businesses that could really do with some support. And one comment that came through loud and clear on our Chamber of Commerce meeting across London was that businesses are unbelievably resilient. I don't know if you see this in your meetings with directors.
No, absolutely I do. And I think one of the things, so I was mentioning the coronavirus rent bill that we had in Parliament on Wednesday, and one of the clauses in it is that the various things will apply if a business would have been viable under any other circumstances. And I did actually, in my speech responding to the minister, say, well, it's really difficult to say what what would and wouldn't have been viable in a different circumstance. And I made the point that so many businesses adapted, diversified during lockdown. Their original business model couldn't be viable in a lockdown, but they found other things to do or other ways of delivering for their customers, or got into new sectors entirely. So, but the same kind of applies in reverse. It's like, but lots of business owners and their families obviously suffered illness or other setbacks, And it's kind of like it's an almost impossible clause to satisfy. It's like, if things had been different, they'd have been different. And and that's the whole point about business, is that it does adapt depending on what the circumstances
And the
are. So you
type of-
can't say take away this one thing and would it still have been a viable business? It's like, it would have been a different business. So how could you possibly say? So, but I really think that that's something. So many businesses adapted and did new things, and some of them have done really well, and some just paused activity and are now picking it up again, and they had the reserves to do that. Others haven't survived, but their owners will pick up the pieces and go and do something else. So it's just a very, very changing environment.
What amazes me is they don't complain. I mean, it's remarkable. Their attitude is on the whole, I would say, is incredibly resilient and just getting on with it rather than
I think that's right.
Or complaining.
Yes,
They're just going to accept it.
Exactly, I think that's right. And I think every new situation creates a new opportunity. And if you're the sort of person who wants to run a business, you just have that frame of mind of like, right, what do we do now? What do we do next? And always taking that next step, always moving forward. And that's the really, really precious commodity, if you like, of a business owner that we really want to cherish and preserve and support. And that's why I talk a lot about lowering barriers to entry for new entrepreneurs, because it's kind of like, if you've got a great idea, if you've got the energy and the commitment and the enthusiasm to make it happen, we just want everyone to kind of stand around you and push you forward and make that happen, and not put too many barriers in the way.
Yeah. International trade is another area which, that with the London Chamber of Commerce affiliation, we can provide quite a lot of service now, and we are getting approached by a lot of businesses who are looking to do more international trade. So that's opening up great opportunities there, and we're being promoted in Dubai as we speak, Richmond Borough.
Excellent.
So the logo is up in the booth there on the LCCI, the London Chamber of Commerce stand. So it's a really good opportunity. I just wondered whether you were coming across any comments from your perspective, or anything in Parliament that relates to international trade, apart from the coronavirus infections you mentioned.
Yeah, I think there's a real enthusiasm everywhere to try and boost trade again internationally. Obviously, that's a key focus of the government. Not obviously that's a response to their own Brexit policy, but nevertheless, it's something that's very much at the forefront of everybody's mind, because there's so many good things we can achieve with international trade. Not least, everybody's conscious that we've got less developed countries, and that the best way to bring prosperity to those countries is to trade with them, and that's something that people really want to achieve.
Agreed.
We've got a response. We are. There's been a lot of doom and gloom around COP26, and government should be doing more, which I absolutely agree with. But at the same time, we have gone further than a lot of countries, and the more we trade with other countries, the more we can use that kind of leadership in climate change to really push for change right across the globe, which is going to be so important. So I think it is that there's a lot of enthusiasm for increasing our trade network. I think there are some COVID related obstacles, just silly things like all the containers being in the wrong place, and the lack of HGV drivers makes it very difficult to clear the Port of Felixstowe, for example, and you can't get stuff in and out. So there's some, and a lot of, some of that is COVID related, some of that's Brexit related, some of that's long-term trends, but the kind of those sorts of things are being a bit of a barrier at the moment. But I think more and more British companies are looking at the world at large and thinking, what can we do? And yes, I think it will be helped by some of the trade deals that the government are signing. But I think at the moment it's kind of like the trade deals are just a sort of a bit of a headline. And what British companies really, really need is support to kind of go through the detail. And it's kind of like, how can this tariff agreement help my business? And what opportunity does it give me that perhaps a French or a Swedish or a Malaysian counterpart doesn't get when selling into this market, and really being able to take advantage of some of that. I think there are some issues with some of our trading deals. Certainly, I am unhappy about the lack of scrutiny that MPs get over individual trade deals. But I'm not going to, I certainly think that businesses should be taking advantage of them wherever possible. And I think for now, it's lack of understanding of what's being signed and what the potential opportunities they offer are. And that's something we could address.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously, if we learn anything along the way, when they come back from Dubai, I shall certainly ask about these trade deals. I know the chief exec is traveling around the world, around the region and around other places to promote. Moving on to something which I'm sure you're aware of, is the London as a global city impetus currently. And I know there is a meeting, I think on Monday week, that I may be going to in Parliament. So I'll keep you apprised of that if I go. I don't know, but it's to do with this promoting London as a global city. So that's the big push at the moment from London anyway, as you know. And I wondered if you had any position or whether the Lib Dems had any view on that.
No, I mean, I think, London always has been a global city. It was the first global city. And, we're not going to lose that overnight. But I think we need to be, it's now a bit like, what is it that we still have to offer? And we still have so much to offer. But this is why I was talking earlier about the need to protect our cultural industries, our travel and tourism industries, why they're of strategic importance. And why, people need to be able to get here, and they need to be attracted by more than just, the business opportunities. We are still, I think, the 6th largest economy in the world. We have a significant market that we can offer to overseas businesses, and they should come here and make the most of that. We still have a significant competitive edge in financial services. I think that we're still working through what Brexit means for the financial services, what we can and can't do. But that's
they're adapting, which is what they do.
Adapting, absolutely. I mean, I do worry that the long-term impact of Brexit is that opportunities will sort of fade away. People will go elsewhere. That sort of thing. But we still have a huge amount to offer, certainly as a capital city. And I think what probably we need to understand a little bit better is, what does the government mean by levelling up? Because there's a certain suspicion that levelling up the regions in the north and the Red Wall or whatever it is.
Level down London.
Yeah, well, precisely. And we're already seeing some of the spats between TfL and DfT about funding public transport in the city. We're already seeing some of that kind of almost quite punitive language start to emerge. And I think that's something that London representatives, London businesses have to be quite wary of, because London is still the powerhouse of, the economic powerhouse of the UK. And I think it's in everybody's interest that we try to, even that out a little bit. There's so much potential in the Midlands and in the North and in Scotland and in Wales. And of course, we all want to be making the most of that. But it's foolish to try. We want to do that alongside promoting London. It's foolish to try and do that at the expense of London. And I think that's absolutely the case we've got to continue making.
Thank you so much. And then I had a couple more points. We've got about just about 12 minutes left. And I'm interested, well, we're all interested in the Barnes, the Hammersmith Bridge. I keep wanting to call it the Barnes Bridge. Yes, the Hammersmith Bridge. And also, so anything on that?
Well, is back open to pedestrians and cyclists, which is great news. I was up there just yesterday, actually. I was opening a new post office in Burden Road, which is going to be a huge boost to the local community, and a new pharmacy round the corner. So more facilities for local people. And the reopening to pedestrians and cyclists is certainly providing a boost to lots of people living in the immediate area. They find that, being able to just get back over the bridge on foot, is connecting them back up to all the things they used to do in Hammersmith, whether that was the public transport there or the hospital or getting to work or to school, which I think was a major impact for lots of young people in the area. But there's no doubt, I think, that we've still got all of those groups of people who can't walk or cycle those kinds of distances. or are coming from further away and for whom it's too far to walk. And I'm just pushing as hard as I can for some progress on a commitment to fully restoring the bridge, so at least we can get buses back across. That's my big goal. I want to see buses driving across Hammersmith Bridge again. There's an agreement in principle that that funding will be three-way between Hammersmith and Fulham, TfL and DFT, but obviously, I've referred to several times, TfL are having financial difficulties and are looking to DFT to try and, so nothing, I don't think there's not going to be much more progress on Hammersmith Bridge discussions until those foundation discussions, if you like, between DFT and TfL have been resolved. And it's a bit frustrating, but that's where the politics of levelling up comes in, and the sort of Labour Tory ping pong in the capital is playing out, which is frustrating on so many levels. But as I say, access over the bridge has now been restored. But the other thing I'm doing is I'm lobbying very hard for rickshaws. For those people who can't walk or cycle themselves across the bridge, I want them to be able to call a rickshaw. And I'm quite excited about the possibilities of rickshaws because I think that it could be a really good public transport solution for people who can't cycle themselves but want an alternative to the car. Get someone to cycle them. But there's various sort of legal and financial obstacles in place, but I'm working with the Barnes Community Association in particular to try and unblock some of those, because I'm quite excited about the prospect of a rickshaw.
I saw a lady cycling yesterday with a box on the box on the front, cargo bike, and a beautiful, cute little dog looking over the top, a child, and they're shopping. I thought, wow.
Well, I tell you what, there's a new shop opened on Castle now, a brilliant new sort of health food grocers. It's called Elderflower. And I was there last week and they were showing me their e-bike, and it's got this great big sort of box on the front so that they can do deliveries. And it looked amazing. So just want to recommend Elderflower to all my Barnes constituents. Check it out there in person. But if you can't get there, give them a call and they can come to you. Yeah. So
brilliant. And then policing. That has been slight concern because of a few things happening across the borough. We're still the safest borough, but I just wondered if you had any comments on that.
Yes, so I speak, I'm going to have to plug in my battery, which means I'm going to have to unplug my headphones and my mic. Yeah. So sorry if the sound changes a bit.
No problem.
I don't know why we can't have separate jacks for these things. Yes, so we have a new inspector in Richmond. His name's John McLaughlin. I've had lots of very productive conversations with him, and I regularly share residents' concerns, and he's been very proactive and responsive so far, so that's good. I have written to the Deputy Mayor recently, who's Sophie Linden, who's Deputy Mayor for Policing, and I'm complaining about the fact that so many Richmond police officers are frequently withdrawn from Richmond duties to go and police demonstrations in central London, or unstick protesters from the M25, whatever it is that they need to go and do. And so we lose a lot of our regular police because they're off doing duties elsewhere. So I will keep complaining about that. And there's no doubt we've got vacancies in Richmond, and we want, the step up recruitment to make sure that we get people down here. So a lot of it is about patrolling, a lot of it is just about presence. That for me is the biggest thing, that we just have a presence, just because it deters people who are doing one-off opportunistic crimes. And it's obviously want to protect the potential victims of those crimes, but also to protect, when it's young people just doing something foolish and want to save them from themselves. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that greater police presence is exactly what we need. So I'm pushing for that as much as I possibly can.
Okay. And then, is there anything else locally that is a priority for you? The empty shops seem to be filling up again, which is good. We're seeing nice new businesses, shiny new businesses moving in, which is reassuring for everyone, which is what we all expected this quarter for that to happen.
Absolutely right. I took the opportunity on Wednesday to mention business rates reform again, because
thank you for that. Yes.
Because the government have been promising it for a long time, and there's no doubt there's an unequal playing field between physical businesses that take a premises and businesses that primarily trade online. And I think we absolutely want to encourage online businesses, because there's so many opportunities there, and again, it's accessible, and people can make a good living that way, and I'm all for that. But what I really want to encourage people to take the leap to setting up a premises-based business, and particularly in our town centres, because there's so many positive externalities, if you like, for our communities. True. In having town centre businesses. It creates a sense of place. It gives people somewhere to visit. It enables proper contact between people. And I think coming out of the lockdown, more than anything, that's the thing that people have really really value, the informal contact, just saying hello to the newsagent, or having a chat with the lady on the checkout, or whatever it is. So there's so much value in having centre businesses that you just can't replicate from a digital sales model, much as that has a lot to offer individual entrepreneurs. So that's why I'd really like to see the tax system. There have to be taxes on businesses, but I'd like to see it properly reflect the fact that owning a town centre property, you are contributing to the community, and I'd like to see that reflected somehow. So continuing to push for business rates reform.
It gives the community confidence when they see business names up there, and it's lovely that they can supply, whilst they'll be supplying their volume out through online. It's wonderful.
Yes, exactly.
And locals to be able to pop in and buy.
Yeah, the way forward for so many things is hybrid, isn't it? A hybrid kind of online and physical presence, hybrid working, hybrid cars. But I think that's. But I like I say, we will always want our town centre shops, and we have to support the ones that we have. And I would really encourage. I think I'm right in saying that today is Black Friday.
Yes, it is.
And what I would really say to people is, can they think, instead of giving Jeff Bezos even more pounds to waste on his space adventures, perhaps they could think about coming out to some of our local shops and supporting entrepreneurs who are doing it because they really love retail, they really love serving real life customers, and they really love and feel passionate about what they're doing. And I want those people to be. And
they throw their energies in, don't they, into their businesses.
Your pound is going to a better place, I think.
Lovely, so well put. And then of course we've got our awards whilst we're here on May the 6th. It looks like it will be May the 6th. It's been veering this way and that through May.
Excellent.
But the rugby union have confirmed it would be that date, so I think we'll really go for it. So these are the 2021 business awards, as well as the charity award, which is available. So do encourage when you speak to
I will
enter. It's well, they're so happy, all the winners, and
I know, and some really well-deserved winners there. It was a really great night.
Absolutely,
really enjoyed it, and it's really good to speak to people directly as well about what they're doing and the challenges they're facing. But just to hark back to what you were saying earlier, it's kind of like, yes, there are challenges, but people feel really passionate about what they do, and you just want to find new and better ways of doing it, and that's so uplifting to see.
Yeah, wasn't it? And we've got our next, so ring fence the date. It's May the 6th, Friday, May the 6th. I think we've got Manera coming in, possibly. Something happened there. I don't know. Strange. Yeah. That's just my computer doing strange things. Right. But anyway, thank you so much indeed for coming along today. Really appreciate it. And if there's anything else at any stage, just do alert us, and likewise I'll do the same.
Indeed. And if any of your members who are constituents of mine want to come and talk to me about, either just come and have a chat, because I'm always really, really interested to hear about the different businesses and what's going on. But there are specific issues that are making their life more difficult. I want to hear about that as well, so that we can
absolutely
think about either how to put pressure on the government to make a change, or any number of smaller things that I might be able to help with. I'm really, really keen to hear from people.
Okay, got that. I'll make sure that message gets out. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon, Sarah. I mean, it's a pleasure to see you. Really, really good to see you.
Oh, it's always good to see you as well,
Anne. And thank you for all you do.
Not at all.
On behalf of everyone.